Welcome to That's Based. Happy Hump Day. I'm your host, as always, Caleb Salvatore, reporting from somewhere underground. We're laughing our way through the end of days. Brought to you by Outlaw Streamers and our friends over at Blood of Tyrants Wines. If you head over to drinkbloodoftyrants.com and you use my favorite promo code in the world, which is literally just 5 simple letters, BASED, B-A-S-E-D, like the title of the show, you're going to save 10% off your order at the checkout. They've got a red Merlot wine along with the white Tears of Tyrants wine. And if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, you'll see pictured the Liquid Freedom Energy drink. Get all 3 of them, even if you don't want them. Go ahead and get them to support the show. Drinkbloodoftyrants.com with the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D. Like the title of the show to save yourself 10% off your order at the checkout. I promise you're not going to regret it. All right, well, it is quite the Wednesday after the Wednesday morning here, I should say. I apologize if you can hear. I'm doing my best to soundproof this room. If you can hear a dog incessantly barking, just faintly in the background, it's not mine. I am not an inconsiderate prick who doesn't care about his neighbors. It's someone down the street from us who has evidently decided that their dog can just sit there and bark constantly, and they're not going to do anything about it. So I apologize for that. One of the rare times you'll hear me apologize on air on this show, but I do apologize for that. If you can hear it, we're going to roll with it anyway. I have to listen. Just think of it this way. It makes our relationship that much more intimate, right? I have to listen to it while I'm recording and be distracted by it. You get to be distracted by it while you're listening. We have got a great show for you today. I'm going to lead it all. We got 3 different topics we're going to talk about as we normally do on this midweek check-in here, but we're going to lead it off with a question I got. I got a question from someone, and I've actually gotten a question from a couple people about this topic here, and I've noticed a trend on social media and folks talking about it, and the conversation is growing in various media circles, which is that here, I'll read the text I just got right before I went on the air here from a good friend of the show. It says, let me pull it up. It says, I think Republicans are cooked in 2026. My feed on X is plagued with angry leftists. What do you think? Well, here's the thing. It's easy to look on the surface right now and go, oh, yeah, the Republicans are doomed in the midterms. They could be in serious trouble. And I can see why people might think that. Now, what your social media feed says does not necessarily reflect reality, as we've learned time and time again. Whoever yells the loudest is kind of the winner on social media. And as we've learned, very rarely do those folks ever represent the ever so silent majority. So I wouldn't put too much stock into what social media says, especially, here's the thing with some of you, what's probably happening with a lot of you, and I can see why some of you guys would maybe foresee a blue wave coming here, but a lot of you are probably spending, specifically on Twitter, which I'm no longer on. I have an account to get stories and videos and media for, but I don't actively tweet anymore. But a lot of you are probably on Twitter spending a lot of your time arguing with leftists. And Twitter is just like any other algorithm. It's going to point you in the direction of the content you interact with the most so they can drive more clicks and more ad revenue. And we all know how the business works, right? So if you guys are on there arguing with liberals all day or trolling them, which, by the way, you're doing the Lord's work. I'm not knocking you for that at all, under any circumstances. But if you're on there trolling liberals all day, you're going to get pushed a lot of liberal content because the algorithm knows you're more likely to engage with it. It's really that simple. There's probably a lot of liberals out there that do nothing but sit on Twitter and argue with conservatives all day who are going, oh, my God, how does America not see how upset I am? How are we in such a minority right now? Because the algorithm kind of manipulates your worldview to whatever you interact with the most. So it's easy to see that. So I don't think that it's going to be this giant blue wave going into 2026. I think the response I sent to this text, and I love that you guys come to me like I'm some type of legitimate political analyst, but I got the last 2 election cycles pretty damn close to on the nose. I told you the 2022 midterms were going to be disappointing and to buckle up because it's not going to be this red wave that everyone on our side's telling you. And I told you in 2024 that Kamala Harris's campaign was astroturfed. So I'm pretty good. I even called 2016 for Donald Trump way back in the day before I was even on the air. I called 2016 for Donald Trump. I said, this is, if you look at the base, his base is a whole lot more motivated than Hillary's. And everyone said I was crazy, and I was right. I called 2020 for Joe Biden. Whether there was fraud or not, I'm still going to count it as a win. But I think you'll see kind of similar to what you saw for the Republicans in 2022. My response to this was they're about as cooked as the Republicans were in 2022. Like I said, I love that you guys come to me for this. I have no formal education in politics. I'm not a political analyst or anything like that. All I do is I watch trends. It's something I followed as a hobby for a long time because I find it interesting. So I just watch trends, and I can kind of tell which direction it's going to go. So we're not going to see a blue wave. We'll see a blue ripple. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one, there's no chance in hell that the Democrats take back the Senate. If the Democrats want to take back the Senate, they're going to have to hold all of their battleground states. They're going to have to flip Maine and North Carolina, which isn't undoable, but they're also going to have to flip Florida, Texas, and either Ohio, Nebraska, or Alaska, which seem to be the 3 most attainable. And Nebraska, if it flips, would be to an independent, which it looks like our good buddy Dan Osborne is back running for office again. Well, at least that's what it appears. You think maybe Dan will come back on the show? I wonder if Dan will come back on the show if we invite him. I heard they all liked our video. I actually heard they got a chuckle out of it. But so they have no chance at winning the Senate, virtually no chance at winning the Senate. I think, as you see time and time again, people are frustrated with Congress as a whole, but not necessarily their congressmen. So you will see some of these Republicans start losing. So you'll see the House probably flip blue, but not to the degree a lot of folks who are maybe thinking a little bit more wishfully over on the left think it's going to be. And the reason for that is, well, there's 2 reasons. Number one, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are probably going to be in somewhat similar positions in terms of popularity heading into these midterms. Now, right now, at this point in his presidency, Joe Biden's approval rating was much higher than Trump's, than Trump's is right now. But you have to consider the context of that. At this point in his presidency, Joe Biden's approval rating and popularity was at its peak. Remember, we had just gone through a chaotic year in 2020. You had the global pandemic. You had economic chaos. You had all the riots going on. Cities were burning to the ground. Joe Biden promised people a return to normalcy. And, that normalcy was, where we just had politicians that committed war crimes and actively pushed us into nuclear Armageddon. Just slowly, though, right? Nobody was using mean words toward protesters that were destroying entire cities and pissing on national monuments. Of course not. So people saw Biden as a return to normalcy. So he had a pretty decently high approval rating at the time. The difference was Joe Biden's approval rating at that point in time peaked. Whereas Donald Trump's, what you're seeing right now, he's hovering around 44. I think he's bottoming out. This is as low as he's going to go. This is like when you buy, not a financial advisor, but when you buy a stock when it's at its lowest point, knowing it's going to go back up. That's probably where Trump's at right now. We're past the initial shock and awe of a lot of what he promised to do for his presidency. So the tariffs are in place. You've had the market reaction. The market's only going to go up, guys. Not a financial advisor, but it's probably only going to go up. I checked my stocks today. They're up. They're way up. It's way higher than it was a year ago. It's not as high as it was 3 months ago, but it's higher than it was a year ago. So my guess, and I'm, again, not a financial advisor, talk to someone who knows what the hell they're doing. My guess is by this time in 2026, we'll be back to record highs in the stock market, and nobody's going to be talking about the market anymore. So I think Trump's bottoming out. This is the initial reaction to the shock, and then as kind of, some complacency sets in, people are going to go, okay, well, whatever. And it's going to be kind of like, all right, this is normal. It's fine. It's it is what it is, and there will be people who like it and people who don't like it and everybody in between. But I think people are going to chill out, maybe coming around like fall, winter of 2025. And Donald Trump's approval rating will start to go back up. So you're going to have a president who, while maybe he's not the most popular guy in the country, come for the 2026 midterms, he's going to be trending in the right direction, and it'll be enough to save some of these down ballot Republicans. That's the first reason. The second reason is I think the Democrats are in a very similar position to the Republicans in 2022, coming up on these 2026 midterms, is the Democrats are behaving the same way the Republicans were going into the 2022 midterms. And what I mean by that is they're doing a great job at pointing out problems, and they're doing a great job at making it clear that they're not on the other guy's team, but they're not doing such a great job at offering solutions to those problems, which, if you remember, I had a whole tirade after the midterms in 2022 on the air about how the Republicans didn't offer anybody any alternative. They just said, we're not them. Well, how are you different than them? Don't worry about it. You have to elect us to find out. We don't know what we're going to do, but we know we're not going to do what they're doing right now. And that's essentially the message the Democrats are pushing. Look at these tours that the national figures, Tim Walz, AOC, Bernie Sanders, I think Gavin Newsom's kind of dabbled in it. These guys are going around and they're talking a big game and they're trashing people. No one's really offering solutions. No one's really saying, this is how we're going to do things differently if you elect us. And when people are offered essentially more of the same, or a total wild card roll of the dice that they don't know what's going to happen, it's simply human nature to go with the devil you know, even if things aren't great, because you think, well, how much worse could it get? If it's not totally falling apart, which it's not going to be in 2026, if things aren't totally falling apart, well, I might just stick with what I know. I don't want that type of radical change. We've been through enough these last couple years. I just want some consistency here. You've also got the Democrats, just like the Republicans were in 2022, they have not learned, and they're clinging to an ideology that is extremely unpopular. Remember, another thing I said after the 2022 midterms was that nobody motivates Democrat voters quite like Donald Trump. The Republicans were clinging to MAGA, which has been totally revived as of now. But in 2022, it appeared MAGA was dead in the water. DeSantis was the new torch carrier back in 2022, if you remember. I was on here. I crowned him, and I was wrong on that. I jumped the gun there. But MAGA was DOA. It was an extremely unpopular political identity. It was a poison in a lot of purple or light red or light blue districts to have associated with your name, and it cost the Republicans because they could not let go of the MAGA movement in 2022. Now, long term, it paid off for them, but we're talking short term. We're comparing midterms versus midterms. The Democrats refuse to let go of the woke shit. The woke shit, which, by the way, motivates Republican voters every bit as much as Donald Trump motivates Democrat voters. The woke shit, which turns the average independent voter off in 2025 right now and soon to be 2026, even more than the associations with Trump and MAGA turned off the average independent voter in 2022. So they've got a lot of problems. I'm seeing a lot of them double and triple down on some of the insanity that Americans so adamantly rejected a couple of months ago in the 2024 election. And I think that's going to cost them. I see next to no path that they take the Senate. I see Trump's stock will be trending upwards going into the 2026 midterms because some of these deals are going to take a while to set in, some of these policies. The foreign policy deals that he's trying to strike, these peace treaties. Listen, man, let's say we're like summer of 2026 and he gets a legitimate peace treaty, ceasefire, whatever you want to call it, between Israel and Palestine. Summer of 2026. That's a game changer. Maybe fall. He strikes a legitimate peace treaty. And he gets to go, look at what a great job we're doing. Look at these deals. Maybe China caves on something major economically going into fall. I mean, you have some legitimate October surprise. All it takes is one domino to fall. One domino to fall. And right now, the way Donald Trump set him up, he's kind of sandbagged the first half of the first year of his term here, hoping that it's going to pay off in the second. So it's like what Biden was doing with the economy, right? So you'll have all these deals that are out, and people like me come on the air a couple weeks ago and say, hey, when are we going to get some deals closed out here? And then right around midterm time, all the dominoes start to fall. That could be what he's planning here. And if just one or two of those actually hits, people are going to go, oh, there we go. This is what we voted for. This isn't so bad. And it'll bail him out. So I don't see, and a lot can change. I'm not calling this my official prediction. As we know, this is evolving. I'm not going to slap my name next to it and go check back with me in a year and a half. This is going to be the truth. This is the gospel right here of American politics. A lot can happen between now and then, both ways. So I'm not going to slap my name next to it. I'm just telling you, if you know, like they do those stupid standings on the NFL games. You know, it's like week 8. If the season ended today, this is the playoff picture. Well, the season doesn't end today. But if the midterms were held today, I don't see it being a giant bloodbath for the Republicans the way that a lot of people think it would be. I just don't. There's too many factors working against the Democrats, too many trends. We'll check back in April of 2026, and we'll see how it's going. Maybe a totally different tune. They may be in position to make gains, which would be unprecedented during a president's midterm. So who knows? Not me. All I do is come on here and talk shit and make predictions out of my ass, right? Okay, let's go to the next one here. So if you owe money on your student loans and you haven't been paying them, I got bad news for you. If your student loans are in default, back during COVID, the Trump administration put in a temporary policy that said, hey, we know times are tough right now. A lot of people are out of work. If your student loans are in default, we're not going to collect on them. So they're not going to garnish your wages. They're not going to seize your tax returns, those types of things, right? That was initially supposed to be a temporary relief for people that were really going through it. And I understood that was a common sense thing they could have done. Hey, let's put a hold on this and just help people out, give people an extra $200-300 a month in their pocket. It made perfect sense at the time. The problem is when we got well out of COVID, the next administration, the dementia administration, decided it was simply just going to kick the can down the road on the student debt issue and pass it on to whoever came next. Biden, potentially his VP, could have been the one that got stuck with this. But the Trump administration decided a week ago that collections on these defaulted loans are going to resume. And of course, people are in hysterics right now. How dare they? This is cruel and unusual. Well, no, this is no different than it was 6 years ago. This isn't tyrannical. You have a debt. You didn't pay your debt. Now the creditor is coming to collect on it. That's how this works. You didn't take advantage of the 0% interest that we had for a couple of years. You didn't take advantage of the time period that when they weren't collecting to get your finances right. And I'm not going to judge people. Everyone's got their own individual situation. But that's the reality of it. And this is a tough pill for some of you to swallow, but this is what you need. This is going to be good for you long term. If your student debt was in default and you weren't paying on it, the best thing that could have happened to you is somebody came and said, hey, we're going to start collecting on this now. You're going to start paying the piper. And here's why. Every election cycle, we hear the same thing. We get a couple of radical politicians who try to come out and they try to tell you that they're going to do away with student debt. They're going to we need to waive student debt. It's a talking point. It's an easy sell because who doesn't, like I said, who doesn't want $200 to $300 extra a month in their pocket? It's an easy sell that they're just going to come in, wave this magic wand, and wipe federal student debt away. Well, it's not realistic. Why can't we do it? That's what's going on in Europe. Well, no, Europe has state-run public or higher education. Now, I don't agree with having state-run higher education, but they don't have student debt over there. It's apples to oranges. We have to live in the real world. Maybe you idealistically think that that's what the system here should be, and we can have that debate another time. But that's not the case with the current student debt holders. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. Federally held student loans currently, as of this recording, as of this show here on the 30th of April, federally held student loan debt currently makes up over 1/3 of the United States federal government's total assets. Under no circumstances, I don't care who the president was, if it was Trump, if it was Biden, Bernie, AOC, it doesn't matter. Under no circumstances was the federal government ever going to part with 1/3 of its assets. That would bankrupt the country overnight. It was never going to happen. Those of you who were told by grifters on the radical left, whether they were grifting for power or money or fame or whatever the case may be, those of you who were told by grifters that they were going to get rid of these student loans someday, you've been sold a lie. And all of the late fees and all of the interest that's piled up while you've ignored these payments, you can attribute to those people. Not entirely. Some of it's your fault because you should have been just paying your debts back. But you can thank them for selling you a bag of magic beans that was never going to grow into anything. Totally unrealistic. It was never going to happen. They knew it was never going to happen, but they told you they were going to do it anyway because it got them the book deals, it got them the press tours, it got them into the national conversation in American politics, and it got them reelected over and over and over and over again. But deep down in their heart of hearts, they knew it was completely infeasible for the United States government to part with 1/3 of its total assets overnight. It wasn't going to happen, and they knew that, and they lied to you. And do you want to know the worst part about this? Is these people would have been content lying to you until they were dead and gone, and you were 75 years old, owing 8 times as much on your student loans as you originally took out. Working at Walmart, just trying to keep your house from getting repossessed. They would have been more than happy to leave you out to dry, knowing that they had made millions and millions of dollars and ascended to levels of power beyond your comprehension off of a lie. They would have had no problem doing that. What the Trump administration is doing here, remember when we talked about the Fort Knox thing and about what chaos it would be, but that chaos only gets worse the longer you wait? What the Trump, let's say you're 30 years old and you haven't paid on your student debt in 5 years. You're about to go into collections. You're about to go into garnishment, and you're scared to death, and you should be, because life's going to get tough for a bit here. What the Trump administration just did is the equivalent of what I was talking about with the Fort Knox situation. Let's say you're engaged to a girl, head over heels in love with her, or you're engaged to a guy, head over heels in love with him. But these last couple months, you're about 6 months from the wedding, these last couple months, everything just seems a little off. She's cold, she's distant, she's not replying to your texts as quickly, she goes to the bathroom to check her phone. Something's going on. New perfume, what's going on here? So she says she's going to go out for girls' night. Hey, I think I'm going to go watch the fight with my buddies. That's what you tell her in return. But you don't go watch the fight with your buddies. You follow her. A couple car lengths behind, because that's how far back you stay from a woman when you're harassing her. Not that I would know. And she don't go out to girls' night. No. She just linked up with Kevin from work. You know that guy you saw at the company Christmas party last year? Just gave you a weird vibe, but you thought, I'm just overreacting. Just my stupid, overactive imagination. Well, she's linking up with Kevin. And she just went home with Kevin. Now, your world is absolutely crushed right now, destroyed right now. You don't know what to do. Horrible, 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 horrible. And I'm not downplaying it. It is a horrible thing to find out. And your world comes to a screeching halt and you don't know what to do and you're left to pick up the pieces. But it's better you find out now than 10 years down the road, after I do, after a mortgage, after a couple of kids, after she gets half your retirement accounts. It's better you find out now. It's never going to be easy, but the sooner you find out and the sooner you start doing something about it, the better off you're going to be. I can use this analogy 100 different times. 100 different times. Let's say you go to the doctor just for your annual checkup. The doctor sees a weird, out-of-shape mole, so he decides to send you to the dermatologist. Dermatologist goes, yep, that's melanoma, and they cut it out. And they caught it. They're like, great news. We caught it really early. It hasn't spread or anything like that. We just got to come in twice, 2-3 times a year, get your skin checked. Now, if the doctor would have went, that looks a little odd, whatever, and ignored it, might have made you feel good in the moment, the same way that not having to pay your student loans makes you feel good in the moment. But 5 years down the road, when that shit spread to your pancreas and your kidneys and your lungs and, you're on your deathbed at 30 for something that could have been easily treated, you would have wished that doctor would have sent you that referral. The same way when you're 70 years old, staring down the barrel of never retiring, because that's what'll happen to you, you're going to be wishing, man, I wish somebody would have, you're going to be thinking, man, I wish somebody would have come and collected on that student debt. Because waiving it's not an option. That's never going to happen. That is a pipe dream. Student debt in our lifetime, federal student debt, unless you went to one of those colleges that was like a scam and they have to pay it back, federal student debt for the average 4-year college education for people that aren't working in jobs that are guaranteed reimbursements will never be waived. Ever. Under any circumstances. It will not happen in our lifetime. Take that to the bank and then apply it to your student debt principal immediately. I can use this over and over and over again. I'm doing some minor repairs to the foundation of my house. Not anything crazy. I don't have to have it like replaced or stilted or put on stints or anything like that. I've got some cracks I got to fill in. I got to grind open and fill in. It's the whole thing. I like to go with examples that are relevant to me. I had a guy come out and look at it, and he said, most people leave these, but here's the problem, is this is going to cause significant water damage to your house to the tune of $10,000 to $20,000 if you don't do something about this. Now, it won't do it today, and it's going to cost me hours and hours of time and probably like $1,000 or $2,000 to fix this. And it sucks, and it's annoying, and I'm frustrated that this is how I have to spend my time when this should have been nipped in the bud before I even bought the fucking house. But it's a whole lot better than having a bunch of water leak into my foundation and leak into my garage and leak into my basement and cause $30,000 worth of damage. I'm addressing the problem now. Because the reality of this situation is a lot of people who have been sold this bullshit lie by these politicians, these socialist politicians, that they're going to forgive their student loans, or even Joe Biden. Joe Biden knew, his administration knew, going into the 2022 midterms when they tried to waive that $20,000 in student debt for everybody, they knew for a fact that there was no way in hell that was ever going to make it to the Supreme Court. They were buying votes. They were hoping that they could stall long enough until it was after the midterms. They could just throw their arms up and go, well, we tried. Do you want to know how I know that they knew that wasn't going to go through? Because if they had any inkling of doubt that the Supreme Court would have allowed that student debt relief to go through, they never would have done it. They never would have parted with that significant of a cut of the federal government's assets. It wouldn't have been the full 33%, but it would have been a substantial amount. They never would have been willing to part with it. They would not have played that game. The powers that be, his handlers, never would have allowed him to do that. His advisors, nobody. So you guys, there's a lot of people out there that had the Trump administration not given them this blessing in disguise of collecting on the debt, which is what this is, they would have continued to kick the can down the road. 30 years would go by. They'd be, 60, 65 years old on the brink of retirement, meeting with their financial advisors, and they would realize that there was no way in hell they were going to be able to retire by the age of 90 because they were in so much student loan debt. So much student loan debt that they had ignored out of the hopes that some grifter who's long dead at this point was going to waive this student debt, was going to make it disappear. And these people should be ashamed of themselves for the lie they have sold to people who are clearly desperate. I mean, I hear these horror stories about people that are $300,000 in debt for a student loan or for a college degree that they don't even use, and they're making $40,000 a year. I'd vote for Bernie Sanders too. I feel like that was my only hope, is if somebody to get out of this mountain of debt that I was in. If somebody like that got into office, I don't blame them. And that makes what these people are doing, given the fact that they know it's completely unrealistic, even more despicable. The way they have toyed with people's financial situations for political and monetary gain. They should be ashamed of themselves. And one day, they're going to have to answer for it to somebody who's got way more of a say in how things are run than you or me or any student loan servicer that's going to collect on your debt in a couple of months here. Moral of the story is, if you do have student loans, you should pay them. Get just Dave Ramsey, snowball method, rice and beans, beans and rice. We all got them. I got some still for a degree I don't use that I didn't finish. We all got student debt. Like, it's fine, dude. It's nothing to be ashamed of, You got sold a bag of goods. You got lied to. If you're my age or a little bit older or a little bit younger, I think they're finally starting to turn the page in schools now. But you got told, we all got told by these teachers that, I call it the educational industrial complex, where they just try to funnel kids into higher education. We all got told, if you don't go to a 4-year college and get your bachelor's degree, you're going to be a criminal. You're going to be dead. You're going to be a Walmart greeter until you retire. You're going to live in poverty, digging ditches and, with the prisoners. Just a total fuck up if you don't go to college. So I do have sympathy, because we got lied to when we were kids. Our formative years, the time when our minds are most susceptible to manipulation. Trusted adults, the teachers, people we spent every day with, more time than our parents in a lot of cases. People we trusted sat down and lied to every last one of us, and I don't think they had anything nefarious going on. I think they had been unfortunately misled by this same educational industrial complex, and I think it compromised a lot of people's parents too, because when the teachers put the pressure on the kids to go to college, the kids going to college becomes a status symbol for the parents, and the parents then turn around and they work on behalf of the educational industrial complex as well, and they pressure the kids into going to college so that they can keep up with the Joneses. Well, my daughter got into, blah, blah, blah university. Oh, my daughter got into so-and-so college last week. She was accepted. And you strap your kids with $90,000 worth of student loan debt for a degree that is going to be totally useless in 10 years with the way technology's advancing, and they don't know what to do with it, and you're not going to pay that back, and you did it as a status symbol to keep up with your friends as if that matters. I'm not saying don't push your kids. Fortunately, my parents, I know we make jokes on here about my upbringing, but my parents never gave us this illusion that it was college or bust. We weren't told not to go to college, but we were never told that if the message was not reiterated at home to the degree that it was with a lot of my friends. We'll put it that way. And I got off lucky. Otherwise I would have gone straight into college at 18 years old. Dude, your brain's not developed till it's 25, till you're 25. I was getting tattoos at like 16. I had people, the same teachers telling me that I was going to regret these tattoos when I was in my 30s, would then turn around and in the next breath tell me that I needed to know what I wanted to do for the rest of my life at 18, 17 years old in a lot of cases, because that's when you got to start shopping for colleges, and be willing to commit 5 to 6 figures worth of debt for it. And I don't think they even realized what they were doing. I don't think this was nefarious. I think that was just what they did. Thank God, because I was an impulsive idiot when I was 18 years old. Thank God I didn't listen to them. My rebellious streak was probably my saving grace in my teen years, if you want me to be completely honest. That I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was bound and determined to not take the traditional route that all of my friends were going to take and go to college. And I went out and I did my own thing. Now it's just story time at this point. I went out and I did my own thing for a little bit. Went, okay, I'm going to try the college thing. Went to school part-time, did that for a couple years. Changed majors like 2 or 3 times. Decided not for me. I'm going to do my own thing. And I'm not rich by any means, but I'll leave it at this. I have about 1/4 of the debt that I would have had I finished. And I make about twice as much as I would be making right now had I finished my degree. Mia's the same way. Mia went to college. She's more educated than me. When I say she's more educated than me on the show, I'm serious. Mia has a degree she does not use. A lot of people have degrees they do not use. That is not unusual. It is not anything to be ashamed of. You shouldn't feel ashamed that you were conned when you were a child, when every trusted adult in your life was telling you this was something you had to do. There's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is, but we all need to take responsibility for it as well, because the reality of this student debt crisis is nobody is coming to the rescue. Nobody. We are on our own here, and we need to climb our way out of this hole. I'm on a soapbox getting preachy with you. I don't want to take too much more time up on this subject, but it's something that it's frustrating to people. They strapped a lot of people with debt and crippled what would have been the middle class for an entire generation. And it seems like the Zoomers are starting to catch on, and this Gen Alpha that's coming up are starting to catch on, which is very promising to me. I've said this time and time again, I think the country would be a whole lot better off if 2/3 of the colleges in this country went under tomorrow. Be a whole lot better off long term. You want to learn about things? There's lectures from some of the greatest professors in the world on YouTube that you can get for free. Podcast interviews with them. Little infographic documentaries you can watch that are far more qualified and far more interesting from people who are far more knowledgeable on the subject matter than the burnout that's teaching down at the state college because he wasn't good at anything else and was a forever child that wanted to stay in academia for the rest of his life. That's another reason why they push this educational industrial complex, because they got to keep the cash flow coming, keep their professions intact. It's just one giant scam. You know, if you want to learn about business, let me ask you a question, bro. Like, I know people that are going for I remember people going for like business degrees and stuff in college. And I remember thinking, hold on. Think about this for a second. If your business professor knew what the fuck he was talking about, don't you think he would be out running his own business rather than teaching at a community college for like $15 an hour right now? Don't you think he would be doing that instead? And I'm not going to sit here and say every college professor I had was a loser. There were some cool ones, some knowledgeable ones, some interesting ones. Yeah, of course. But the overwhelming majority of these people that throw the word professor, or even in some cases, my favorite, doctor, by their names, are stuck up, arrogant losers that are good at absolutely nothing else and are capable of contributing absolutely nothing else to society. So they don't stay in academia. They hide in academia where they can't be fired unless they do something egregious, and sometimes even then they don't get fired. I love that when these college professors would throw doctor by their name so arrogantly. Here's my standard for a doctor. Okay, here's my standard for a doctor. You have to check one of the two boxes. If I have a fucking heart attack right now in your presence, am I going to die? If the answer to that question is no, and you're also not capable of filling in a cavity in my tooth, you're not a doctor. You're educated, you're well-esteemed, whatever you want to call yourself, whatever you want. I will not call you a doctor the same way I will not call Jesse, the male named Jesse, that decided he's going to be Jessica because he threw on some makeup, a dress, and some long hair. I'm not going to call him Jessica. Okay, Jesse was probably a bad name because that was a bad example. It was not really a gender binary name there. But I'm not going to call Adam Alexis. How about that? All right, we got one more story here I guess we'll talk about, and then we'll get out of here. Whew, ranting. Rant. It's a very ranty, preachy episode. This is all the stuff that's been bothering me these last couple of days here, and it's all coming out live on the air. Okay. So, last one up here. Shedeur Sanders, the son of jackass head coach Deion Sanders, was originally projected in last week's NFL draft to be a top 5, worst case scenario, top 10 pick in the first round. Well, the first round is held on a Thursday. The first round came and went. Then the second and third rounds are held on a Friday. So the first round came and went Thursday. Shedeur was not drafted. And everyone was like, okay, he slipped a little bit. And there were some rumblings about him being a little cocky in team interviews. There were some breakdowns of his stats. He didn't really face the best defenses when he was in college at Colorado in the Big 12. So there were some concerns there. And it was like, okay, well, regardless, maybe we overrated him in the first round. But he's got to be at least a second-round talent, right? So the second round comes and goes, no Shedeur. The third round comes and goes, no Shedeur. And in fact, at this point, you've got quarterbacks who are projected to go way lower than him in the fifth round getting drafted above him. And everyone's like, what's going on? So by the end of day 2, it's pandemonium. Mel Kiper, the draft analyst, who I don't think has ever gotten a pick right in his entire life, is having a full-blown meltdown on ESPN, calling it disgusting. Stephen A. Smith is on Twitter implying collusion. It just goes on and on and on. People are spazzing out. And then the fifth round rolls around and Shedeur finally gets drafted. Now, this has, of course, turned into a race thing, because why would it not? Well, however, what these race pimps won't tell you, these people grifting off racial issues in America. By the way, you notice the Carmelo Anthony camp has been rather quiet in that stabbing. Interesting. Well, what these race pimps won't tell you is that the first pick of the draft, the first overall pick, was a black guy. It was a black guy. Oh, yeah. It was a black guy. It wasn't just a black guy. It was a black quarterback. So the racism allegations go right out the window. There's a guy named Cameron Ward from Miami who's very talented. But that's not enough for the race pimps. They have to continue to fan these flames. They got to find a way. The grift can never stop with people that pimp, or with people that grift off of racial issues in this country. And that goes for both ways. The grift can never stop. You have to keep the grift alive. There's always some grand conspiracy at play by the other side to, quote unquote, keep you down. And what the race pimps settled on was that Cameron Ward was guilty of something called code switching. Now, code switching is where a black guy will not act, quote unquote, black, whatever that means, to impress wealthy white people in the business world. Or Have you guys ever considered that maybe that's just how Cam Ward acts? Like, do you understand how? I guess they didn't outright accuse Cam Ward of code switching. They said Shedeur refused to code switch, which implied that Cam Ward was. Now, Cam Ward's a very talented quarterback. I hope he does great things at Tennessee, other than when he plays my Patriots or when we're competing for a playoff spot with his team, whatever. I just feel horrible for him because no one's talking about him. Everyone's talking about a quarterback that got drafted in the 5th round. You had this guy he's a phenomenal talent, had a career year, and all anyone wants to talk about is Shedeur Sanders getting drafted in the 5th round. Now, there's a couple of reasons here. You can go back after the Nebraska game. They asked Shedeur Sanders, about his poor play when we whooped their ass that game, by the way. And he turns around to the reporters and goes, how many times did Raiola get hit? Raiola was Nebraska's quarterback, for those of you that are losers, gays that don't watch football. He said, how many times did Raiola get hit? He threw his offensive line under the bus in press conferences. That wasn't the first time he's done that, and it wouldn't be the last time. He would flash a big flashy watch in front of the camera every time they won, taunt opposing players, get into shouting matches and altercations with the other team's ball boys. He was a jackass. So it was no surprise when we heard that Shedeur's interviews with teams weren't quite going the way they thought they were. That he kind of came off as a cocky, spoiled little prick, and that's what he is. He's a Nepo baby. Daddy's a multimillionaire NFL superstar, Deion Sanders. Daddy becomes your head coach everywhere you go. You never have to compete for your job. In fact, when Deion Sanders took over at Colorado, the first thing he said in the press conference was, this is my son, that's your quarterback. End of discussion. Okay. I guess everybody else in the quarterback room might as well just leave now. He's a Nepo baby. He's been handed everything his entire life. That's a fact. So maybe that's got something to do with it. Maybe they didn't want to deal with his helicopter dad that would be trying to run the show. For a talent that was, yes, while Shedeur's a decent quarterback, he's not generational. Maybe it was the fact that he said things like this in the NFL Combine.
If you ain't trying to change the franchise or the coach, don't give me. So you should know history repeats itself over and over and over, and I've done it over and over and over, so it should be no question why an NFL franchise should pick me. You think I'm worried about what critics say or what people got to say? You know who my dad is? They hated on him too. So it's like it's almost normal. Without people hating, it's not normal for us. So we like diversity. We like everything that comes with the name. That's why we are who we are.
Man, how long was the bus that took that guy to school in the mornings? I'm sorry. Sounds like a moron. Let me ask you guys a question. How many times have you ever had a positive experience with someone who said the words, do you know who my dad is? Because I've heard those words a couple of times, and it's a big fat zero. I've never once interacted with someone who went, do you know who my dad is, male or female, black or white, Christian or Jew, straight or gay, and walked away from that interaction going, yeah, that was a positive experience. I could use some more of that guy. When you go in and you tell NFL teams, coaches that have been trying to establish a culture for years, that they better be ready to adapt their culture to you, a guy who's got a 500 record in D1 football, a guy who who takes unnecessary sacks because he's trying to pad his stats with passing yards, a guy who throws his offensive lineman under the bus every time he gets his ass handed to him, a guy who has unnecessary confrontations with equipment managers and showboats every time he scores and shows his ass, not literally, figuratively. You're going to tell those guys that they need to adjust their culture to you? What do you think they're going to say? The NFL is a business just like anything else. I don't care if you're running a professional football team or an O'Reilly Auto Parts store. You have to weigh talent versus baggage. Now, baggage doesn't always mean the guy's a criminal or a wife beater or anything like that. It may just mean he's a locker room cancer and a jerk off. Now, there are guys out there that are cancers to the locker room, like Antonio Brown was with the Steelers, that you put up with. Randy Moss would be another example. You put up with them because the talent's there, and it just outweighs, at least to a certain point it does. Eventually it gets, all those guys erode eventually and just totally unravel. But the baggage the baggage doesn't outweigh the talent. That was the thing with Kaepernick. There was no, I understand they reached a settlement. In my opinion, it didn't look like collusion to me against Kaepernick. Kaepernick wasn't a bad quarterback. He was better than a lot of backups in the NFL. But the baggage and media circus that came with Colin Kaepernick was not worth the quality of player you got in Colin Kaepernick. Another example of that would be Tim Tebow. There's a problem when you have a backup quarterback in the end. And it's nothing. Tebow's a great guy, right? The talent just wasn't there as an NFL passer. Okay? So there's a problem, though, when there's a media circus around your backup quarterback. NFL teams didn't collude against Shedeur Sanders any more than they did against Tim Tebow. They came to individual decisions, in my opinion, and said, yeah, probably better than, the second or third team guy we have on the team. Not worth the shit show that's going to come with him. And that's life. I've worked sales jobs where we had the guy who was the top salesman at the company 1 month, was fired the next month. Made the company egregious amounts of money, but tore down team morale because he was a jackass that nobody wanted to be around. That was a long time ago. But still, that jackass was me. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. But I've worked with, we've all worked with people like that. It's just like running an office. You draft a clown, you get a circus. And teams didn't want to put up with the circus. They're also just done overvaluing quarterbacks. And we're getting sports inside baseball here. It's fine though, right? I grew up watching football in the 2000s, and I remember late 2000s, early 2010s, you started to see this trend where teams would reach on quarterbacks. And they would reach on quarterbacks because they were pressured by ownership and the fans to do something because they had a subpar quarterback. They needed to get over the hump, so they rolled the dice on a guy who probably wasn't a first-round talent. Guys like Paxton Lynch, guys like E.J. Manuel, guys like Tim Tebow, Brandon Weeden. I could go on and on and on and on, listing quarterbacks off in the 2010s that were taken in the first round that had absolutely no business going in the first round. But teams took them anyway. And do you know what happened? GMs and coaches got fired. Franchises got set back tens of millions of dollars in 4 or 5 years at a time. Because drafting a quarterback in the first round, that's a 3 to 5 year commitment, substantial amount of salary cap. What happened is teams have just learned. Everybody except the Cleveland Browns, who did this with Johnny Manziel and didn't learn from that circus, then did it again with Deshaun Watson and still didn't learn from that circus. But the other 31 teams have figured it out. We're not going to draft a quarterback. We're not going to overvalue a quarterback who's a 4th-round talent and take him in the first round just because we need a quarterback. We'll draft an edge rusher. We'll look in free agency, see if there's a guy there next year. If there's not, then we'll evaluate the quarterbacks in that draft. But we're done overvaluing quarterbacks. You can get fairly far in today's NFL, at least far enough for a coach to keep his job, with an average game manager quarterback. A lot of people thought it was going the other direction. It's not the case. You don't need the elite quarterback to make the playoffs. We saw the Minnesota Vikings. Living testimony to that. Sam Darnold, are you kidding me? You don't need a stud quarterback to keep your job as a coach. You can get a guy that'll manage the game and right the ship and keep your head above water long enough for you to find your guy. Teams are done gambling on people that are high risk, high reward like that in the first round. And I don't blame them. But it's not a race issue. Shedeur Sanders is a jackass. His dad is a jackass. The two of them are a package deal. And the bonus to that package deal is the shit show that they bring everywhere they go. And NFL teams don't want that. And that's been our show. We'll see you on Saturday for the big show. Cheat on your taxes. We're going to talk some Bill Belichick and his girlfriend. That's awkward right there. Cheat on your taxes, not your spouse. Stay based.